There are 5 scientific principles which we have to understand to plan a proper diet and exercise. The first one is the insulin surge. The second one is central obesity. The third one is metabolic shift. The fourth one is the muscle mass. The fifth one is the hormones. So in the next 5 minutes, I'll be explaining briefly in a common man's language what each of these mean and how to use these principles and apply these principles to better manage your diet and exercise. Insulin surge. So what is an insulin surge? It is simply the insulin that rises after your meal. When you take a meal, once the sugar gets absorbed into the blood, the sugar rush has to be managed by a spiking insulin which reduces these blood sugar levels. Now it is ideal to keep these insulin levels shorter and flatter. The flat rise, that means instead of having spiky rises, if it is a flat rise, it is good for your metabolic health. Also, it has to be for a short period of time. So this is the concept of the insulin surge. The second one is the central obesity. Now fat gets deposited everywhere. It gets deposited under your skin, it gets deposited around your organs. But the difference is the fat that wraps around your organs, be it kidneys, liver, intestines, is what is called as visceral obesity. Now you might have seen the Japanese sumos who have a significant amount of obesity, but they still have a lower metabolic risk profile because their obesity is predominantly subcutaneous, which is not as dangerous as a visceral obesity. Now the visceral obesity is dangerous because the lipolysis that happens, that means that the fat breakdown that happens in these areas moves as free fatty acids to the liver. Now liver is a major metabolic control organ in your body. So when there is a lot of free fatty acid surge, the liver increases triglycerides, it increases LDL cholesterol, it increases glucose generation, all of which are what is called as an atherogenic profile, which means it increases your risk for heart disease in the long run. So managing visceral obesity can reduce this risk profile. That is the second aspect. Now the third one is the metabolic shift. So what is a metabolic shift? In simple words, when the body is in glucose excess, the body should be able to use glucose for energy, and when it is deficient, it should be able to use the free fatty acids and fats for energy. This metabolic shift from glucose metabolism to fat metabolism has to occur in a jiffy without much risk or without much effort from the body. This kind of profile is better maintained in healthy individuals, which leads to less craving, less energy loss. For example, you might have seen a lot of obese people who after a short period of lack of food become very tired. That's because their body is not able to shift the metabolism from glucose to fatty acids. So this kind of a metabolic profile should be developed by your diet and exercise to help you manage energy without taking excess calories. The fourth aspect is about the muscle mass. Now muscle mass is very important thing. A thin lean individual might be fit enough for now, but exposed to high glucose loads, the glucose sink does not happen. In a person with a good muscle mass, the glucose tends to sink in these organs and it provides a good reserve for any amount of glucose load that surges in the body. The last aspect is hormones. The hormones can be easily manipulated to increase the fat metabolism, to decrease glucose generation, and to decrease appetite. There are 2 or 3 hormones which are important. One are what are called as incretins, the GLP-1 and GIP along with leptin. All these 3 delay the gastric emptying and decrease your appetite significantly. Whereas ghrelin is the hormone which increases the appetite. Now manipulating these hormones can help you manage obesity by decreasing your food intake and ultimately the calorie intake. So in the next section, we'll be talking about how diet and exercise can be manipulated to use these scientific principles for better management and smart diet and exercise methods.